for the rest to join us. Hello, we will give like few minutes so more participants can join us. Thank you.
بس رح أطلب يمكن من علا
I just like to ask Ula to mute herself. Thank you.
أوكي إذا ما في مانع رح نبلش
If you don't mind, we will start our webinar today. This webinar organized by the INEE, which is about understanding the MHPSS and situational analysis in Gaza. You are all welcome. We would start this webinar by sharing some general instructions. Next, please. All the videos and microphones are muted for the participants. You can use the Q&A anytime during the webinar. If you are using your laptop, it is at the bottom of your page. You can find there mute and unmute videos, Q&A, chat. You can find them at the bottom of your screen. This webinar is recorded to be used later. It is recorded in Arabic and English. Of course, this records will be shared on our website.
كم عفوا بس دقيقة شوي.
Excuse me. The word of the INE. Today I am the facilitator, Mariam Jafar, the coordinator of the comprehensive learning in the INE. We'd like this webinar to be under the agreement of the right of children to education under the UN agreement, that decree number 2, that if all a child has the right to education wherever they are, whatever language they speak, wherever their religion, regardless of their color, whether they are girls or boys, whether they are poor or rich, and regardless who their parents, families, ideas, doctrines, or what they do. And it is not accepted to deal with any child unfairly for any reason. Article number 6, it's about life, staying alive and growth. Article 24 about health, water, nutrition and environment. 27, it's about food and safe shelter. 28, it's about access to education. 38 about protection from war. When we were considering, since we have many questions regarding a webinar talking about the MHPSS in Gaza, children, the youth there, and what they are going through concerning the mental health and the social and psychological support and the available programs, whether they would be applicable or not. So we thought about organizing this webinar, and we put the following goals, which is facilitating, exchanging knowledge, and enhancing cooperation between stakeholders and workers in the mental health cluster in Gaza, and to discuss ideas and thoughts about the needs and the current challenges concerning the MHPSS in Gaza, to know about the available services, resources, and capacities in the field of MHPSS in Gaza, and to define the gaps, the chances, and to analyze, to support the MHPSS in Gaza, so we can find how we can work and on. Mahmoud is saying that he can't hear me. Can we check, everybody? Can you hear me clearly? Okay, I will repeat. This webinar under the framework of analyzing the situation to find a way to plan to mitigate the dangers and to put bases for sustainable education, more sustainable and more equivalent education. Our speakers for today: Patricia Landines, she's a co-chair in the MHPSS in the INEE. Patricia works in education team affiliated to UNICEF in New York. Frost Babit, she's a specialist in the education program based in the UNRWA agency in Amman. Dr. Muhammad Awad Shbeir, he joined us by sending a voice message. He has a PhD in education management from Sudan University. He has an BA in psychology. He is now in Gaza. Dr. Ilham Nasser, she's a teacher with more than 30-year experience in teaching early childhood and developing curriculum, enhancing the capacities of teachers. She participated in designing curriculum about critical thinking, especially for the refugees in Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. Now she works with Creative Associates International, and she's the technical consultant with the BEA. Ola Badawi, she's a specialist in education. She started working with the humanity and inclusion in Gaza as an responsible person for comprehensive education in 2020. To Mahmoud Abu Draz, he works as a manager of education in Gaza with the humanity and inclusion, and he works in a humanity field for more than 17 years. He's a trainer of the Sphere in Gaza, and he conducted many training on these criteria for INEE in Gaza Strip. Hana Awad, she works as a coordinator for the MHPSS programs with the TCC since 2023. Now we would move to the keynote speech by the INEE-PSS SEL working group. Patricia Landines, she is a co-chair, and after that we would listen to a recorded word from Catherine Panji, from the head of Education for Development, UNICEF in Palestine. Patricia, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. My name is Patricia Landines. I work with UNICEF headquarters with the education team around the integration of mental health and psychosocial support programs and services within schools and also other learning environments. On behalf of the INEE PSS Cell Working Group, I'm honored to welcome you to the webinar and to thank you for joining us today. Your presence demonstrates the commitment of the INEE community to work around the promotion and protection of mental health and well-being of children and teachers in the education sector. It is so great to see so many of us coming together to show our support and solidarity during these difficult times. We are all aware about the challenging situation in Gaza, and we understand the mental health and psychosocial impact it can have on children, young people, and also on their caregivers and teachers. Months of escalating conflict have turned the Gaza Strip into the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. Even before the ongoing conflict, UNICEF estimated that more than 500 children were in need of mental health and psychosocial support, or MHPSS. Today, UNICEF estimates that almost all children living in Gaza, more than 1 million, are in need of MHPSS. The physical, mental health, well-being, learning, and development of many children in Gaza are at stake. Daily, Children are exposed to extreme violence, destruction of infrastructure, displacement, and lack of access to food and the basic services they need to survive. Given the severity of the situation, it is imperative that children receive the necessary support and services to overcome adversity and thrive in the face of adversity. Today's webinar is a forum to have an open and constructive discussions about the situation of children and their caregivers and educators in Gaza. We're really privileged to hear from our colleagues who are working in the field to respond to the holistic needs of children. They will soon share with us the latest information and insights regarding the situation of MHPSS needs of children and educators. We appreciate this opportunity to learn from them about their organization and planning to address these needs in the education sector. We are going through unprecedented times, and by joining our efforts, we can make a difference. It is our shared responsibility to continue working and begin preparing for the day when the hostilities end. We can then accelerate efforts to help all children affected by war to heal, develop physical and mental well-being, continue with the learning journey, and be prepared for a brighter future. To do so, we need different and innovative approaches. Again, we're very grateful to INEE for holding us together in our common vision to improve access to quality, safe learning spaces that are also responsive to the mental health and psychosocial support needs, not only of children, but also of teachers. As we move forward, let us draw inspiration from the dedication and commitment from our colleagues presenting today. To end, I would like to introduce one of our colleagues, Panjit Catherine Chamdimba. She is one of our tireless UNICEF colleagues working in Gaza. She's currently the chief of the education team in the state of Palestine. Unfortunately, she's unable to join us today, but she has sent us her presentation over a video. Thank you for joining us today and hope you enjoy the webinar. Now you will see her video.
I want to start by sharing the current situation in the state of Palestine. So as you all know, since October 7, schools have not been open in the state of Palestine in the Gaza Strip, affecting over 625,000 children. And as of today, we have over 90,000 schools that have either been damaged or they are being used as the shelters. Sorry, I meant over 90% of the schools in the Gaza Strip are either damaged or are being used as shelters. And then also a very high number of children and teachers have been killed, and also a high number of students and teachers have been injured. So this means that when we reopen the schools in Gaza, we should be ready to receive a lot of children and teachers that will be coming with disabilities. So our response plan is also taking this into consideration. The situation in West Bank is equally bad. The students are not attending schools in person. So they come 2 days in person and the remaining 3 days they are supposed to learn online. And we all know what it means learning online. And we also have schools in West Bank that since the 7th of October have not come to school in person at all because of the restriction in access or because of the security situation, they're not able to reach their schools. So what is UNICEF doing? So our response in the state of Palestine is in both at the sector level as well as at an organization level. So at the sector level, we are co-leading with Save the Children for Education Cluster. And as co-lead, we've been able to coordinate partners that are available and active in Gaza. And we've been able, through the cluster partners, to reach over 100,000 children with recreational and MHPSS activities. UNICEF is also co-chairing the Education in Emergency Thematic Working Group with the MOE. And as co-chair, we've been able to coordinate with partners, and we've supported the Ministry of Education to come up with a response plan. So the response plan was presented at the Education Sector Working Group, which is the final now, and it's a plan that the Ministry of Education is using as both a fundraising tool as well as coordinating partners to contribute to the response. And I'm pleased to say that MHPSS and recreation activities is a major component of the Ministry of Education response for 2024. UNICEF is also the grantee for the ECW MERP that ended in December 2023. So immediately after the 7 October escalation of conflict, UNICEF as a grantee was able to reprogram all the resources that were remaining under the ECW MERP, and we used it to support the partners to respond to the situation. Let me also mention that
I think the video is frozen, or at least for me.
Yeah, I thought it was only for me. So yeah, it's freezing. عفوا الهيئة في عطل تقني إذا فينا ننطر شوي بس لحتى نحله.
It seems that we have a technical problem. Let's wait a little bit till we can sort it out.
بعدنا مش قادرين نسمع.
Till now we can't hear.
Can you see the screens?
إيه فينا نشوف فينا نشوف الشاشة.
Yes, we can see the screen, but we can't hear the sound.
we started to talk to partners that
Okay, now we can hear.
Recreational activities in the IDP shelters so that they can start integrating informal and the fun learning into the activities. And then phase 3 is mainly focusing on the reconstruction efforts based on the building back better principles. This will be at a later stage when after the ceasefire, because it's physically not possible at the moment. For the UNICEF response plan, we need over 29 million US dollars to implement the activities in the response plan. The progress to date is the response plan for the MOE that UNICEF coordinated. We've also activated the learning passport with the Ministry of Education, and we've trained some MOE staff, and they have developed some materials for grades 1 to 4, focusing on the core subject areas, including MHPSS. We have reached over 50,000 with recreational activities, mainly in the IDP shelters in Gaza. We have also procured and prepositioned some teaching and learning materials. And for the adolescent girls, we have distributed over 4,700 adolescent personal care kits to support the adolescent girls with their menstrual hygiene management. And as I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of starting to establish the safe learning spaces. The key challenges has mainly been on communication, where it's been very difficult to reach our partners in Gaza because of the communication blackout. And then the other challenge is that the population keep on moving. Some population have moved more than 6 times since the war started on 7 October. And the other key challenge is the capacity of the implementing partners on the ground, because they themselves are sheltering in different IDP, and due to limited mobility, they are not able to respond like the way they used to implement prior to the 7 October. And then, of course, as you may all know, that education is usually not considered as a life-saving intervention. So it was difficult to mobilize resources as well as to mobilize movement of supplies, because the priority was for the life-saving interventions. But I'm glad to report that MHPSS is now considered as life-saving, so it is under the program criticality 1, so it is also prioritized. So since then, that's why we've been able to move materials as well as to implement. As you can see, the need for MHPSS and recreation activities is huge. So you can see the way the children are, a lot of them, since we started our recreation activities in the IDP shelters. You see that even the adults, they are also joining because they also need MHPSS support. So I would like to leave with you a video to show some of the recreation activities that UNICEF has implemented with the partners. It's a 1-minute video, so it's very short. Thank you very much.
شكرا باتريسيا وشكرا دكتور بانجي.
Thank you very much, Patricia and Dr. Banji, for the overview that you provided about the UNICEF activities in Gaza. Now we would like to move to listen to a child in Gaza who was subject to get one of her legs amputated because of war. And after this video, we would move to listen to UNRWA, and after that, one of the teachers in Gaza, who is Dr. Shbeir. Please play the video. I am Razan Munir Arafat. I am 11 years old. I'm from Gaza Strip, from Zaytun area. We were at our house at 4 o'clock. We out of sudden found dust, and I found myself on the floor, and there is blood on my leg, and many people were screaming and crying, after it becomes clear and there's no dust, they sent us to a Talatini family. Then they moved, my father's friend took me to a Shifa hospital. I was in the hospital where I lost my father, mother, my only brother, and two sisters. After that, I was moved to my grandfather's house. After that, I was moved to El Janin. Here, there are families from Kuwait, and when I arrived, the area was very crowded, very, very crowded. My leg was hurting and I started screaming. After that, we reached Nusayrat. Then we took a bus, and after that, I moved to my neighbor's house. They used to help me. And so I'd like to thank them, to thank my uncles, my cousins, my uncles' wives, because they used to help me and to just to try to talk to me a lot so I would forget about my pain. I want the war to stop, to live like normal children. I don't like my leg to be like this. I'd like to go to play in my neighborhood, to play with other children.
Make sure to subscribe to our
Thank you. Actually, this is the dream of all children, to have their rights and to play. Okay, let's move to the UNRWA response to the response in Gaza. Frost, the mic is yours.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Once again, thank you for INEE for giving us the opportunity to speak to all of you on the situation in Gaza and on the MHPSS response that is the focus of today. Unfortunately, I'm having problems with my computer, so I'm not able to connect via the computer, so I'm connecting through the mobile, but I'm very glad that now it's working. So I will, if okay, I will turn off my camera and will present through the mobile. We can go to the next slide, please. So a couple of months ago, I think, or maybe more now, in December, we were invited as UNRWA to present as part of the Protecting Education from Attack webinar that was held second half of December, if I remember correctly. And we presented this slide, but now, unfortunately, the numbers had increased. We're hoping by this time we will have reached a ceasefire and the situation would have been different. But unfortunately, we're here again. We're just reporting numbers, and these numbers are from 26 February. And by now, if I want to update them, they would be even more. So I want to say one point at this stage, that as we speak of the current crisis, we should never forget that the crisis did not start with the current war, and especially when we're talking about MHPSS in Gaza. The current war has, of course, deep roots in the prolonged occupation, the protracted displacement of the Palestinian refugees. The majority of the Gaza population are refugees from 1948. The ongoing conflict, the recurring violence, the blockade that's now 17 years old. So all this has been just escalated. The impact of all this on the psychosocial well-being of the children has just been escalated by the current crisis, where we have 1.7 million internally displaced people. Our UNRWA facilities are being targeted. There's no safe space in Gaza. Unfortunately, we continue to mourn today 160 UNRWA staff members that have been killed since the beginning of this current crisis. And we have at least or over 400 IDPs sheltering in UNRWA facilities that have been killed, and at least or over 1,000 that have been injured. And this is just to say that there is nowhere safe in Gaza at the moment. If we can move on to the next slide. This is just to show the MHPSS context in Gaza. Prior to the crisis, both UNICEF and Save the Children reports estimated that 80% of the children were experiencing emotional distress, 90% feeling less safe alone. And these are reports from 2022-2023. UNRWA, we did an internal assessment after the hostilities of May 2021, and it showed that 42% of the children were in need of psychosocial support. 9 months later, children were still suffering from trauma. Since the beginning of this current crisis, the already critical mental health of children and youth in Gaza has worsened. UNRWA estimates that at least 90% of the children across UNRWA shelters are exhibiting alarming signs of emotional distress and trauma due to cumulative exposure to traumatic experiences, death, and violence. This is, of course, impacting on all the support structures around these children, the families, the caregivers, the teachers, the counselors, and all the normal support structure around children. Recreational spaces with very, very mentioned in Gaza, not space. Can thank you. Noticing several in Gaza protection risks. Of course, there is the lack of basic supplies. Unfortunately, we've all seen reports of this week in which it is mentioned that there are at least 10 children that died out of famine. So there is really scarcity and shortages in food, drinking water, and the medical system is said to be collapsing. So all the support structure around the children is really not looking good at the moment. Of course, there's also negative coping mechanisms, child labor, exposure to abuse and exploitation, more violence, more gender-based violence, more exposure to risks that children should not be put at this stage, but unfortunately they are due to the situation. There are also the risks of the unexploded devices. Of course, this put children that were already marginalized prior to the crisis with additional vulnerability. And here we're speaking about children with disabilities, additional challenges basic resources and lack of space, in which there is an estimate of 17,000. We have high number of the children, no surviving, difficulties in identifying, registering, and tracing the first situation is at the moment. The next slide. Sorry,
Excuse me, Ross, you keep cutting off a little bit, so.
Thank you. The UNRWA before going into the UNRWA education in Gaza, what it was before the crisis and what it is now, I will take it as an opportunity now as an education and emergency specialist, and many of us are on this call. We always used to say that inclusive quality education contributes to children, youth, and their community's psychosocial well-being. We say that we do education and we prioritize education in emergencies because it gives a sense of normalcy in times of emergencies. But unfortunately, in the context of Gaza, this was not the case. We could not provide any education since early October, since the 8th of October, basically. Our schools have been turned into shelters. In Gaza, we have 290 schools and vocational training centers operating in 185 buildings because most of the schools operate on second or triple shifts. Many of these schools, 69, have been directly impacted during the war, and 54 suffered collateral damage. And this data keeps on changing as we go. We have almost 10,000 teachers in Gaza and 500 school principals that are off duty now, and they have become IDPs themselves, sheltering in the schools. More than 70 or 75% of those who have been killed of the UNRWA staff are education staff. And then of the pre-existing capacity of 270 school counselors, 568 assistant counselors, we have approximately only 300 that are able to work inside the shelters. If we can move to the next slide, please. On MHPSS, we have an inclusive education approach to MHPSS, and which is very much in line with the multi-layer intervention pyramid for MHPSS. And we try through good teaching and learning practices and good support structure around the students to strengthen the bottom of the pyramid so that we try to prevent as much as possible children from arriving at the top of the pyramid. And this is now our challenge in Gaza, because how can we do that when we cannot even provide the very basic services that are needed at the very bottom of the pyramid? If we can move to the next slide. UNRWA has its education in emergency approach, and of course MHPSS is the first step. It's mainstreamed all across the various phases. And we prioritize MHPSS as a precondition for starting any form of learning. But unfortunately, even the provision of MHPSS at the phase 1 has been proven to be challenging, as I will show in the next slides. If you can go to the next slide, please. So usually there are preconditions or assumptions for starting this phase 1, and the first precondition is having a ceasefire, is having a safe space, is having some sort of ability of movement. But unfortunately, we had to operate without those, and basically depend on whatever capacity we have in the ground. As I mentioned, the 300 counselors or assistant counselors that are working with the support of education staff in the shelters. They themselves IDPs, they have not taken one day off since the start of the crisis, and they're doing this because they feel the sense of duty to their community. And this is something that we all, it inspires us all in all that we're doing. And like, for example, we're trying now to purchase recreational kits in order to support them, at least with material support. But with the current supply that is going into Gaza, we do not know when we will be able to supply any material in Gaza. And of course, there is the issue of the availability of spaces, with the majority of the population now moving into Rafah, and having a space in order to operate is becoming more and more challenging. If we can move to the next slide, please. So MHPSS in emergencies for us is more a scale up of the MHPSS that we do in normal times. It's the inclusive education approach to MHPSS. We prioritize working on protective factors, finding child-friendly spaces, supportive parents or caregivers, teachers, providing opportunities to play for children. We emphasize coping mechanisms, and we try to work on the emotional resilience through strengthening relational networks with peers, family, and community. If we can go to the next slide, please. And this is basically what we have been able to do now, or the counselors were able to do in Gaza in the shelters. They've been providing individual and family consultations. They've been doing counseling sessions. They've been doing awareness sessions on explosive ordnance, risk education, staff support, and identification and addressing of protection cases, as well as recreational activities for children. And the picture that you see is a setup of what they called the School of Hope in Khan Yunis, in which they set up some space for children to do recreational activities with minimal resources. The next slide, please. And these are more pictures of activities happening, whether in the schools or in this space that the counselors managed to set up in Gaza. And I think I will end with the last slide with a message from a child sheltering in one of our shelters in Rafah, saying that even schools are not safe for us. And I would leave you with this message, and thank you very much for listening, and I'm here for any questions after. And I hope the presentation was clear because I've been having really technical problems. Thank you.
شكرا فراس. كانت
Thank you, Frost. This presentation was clear, and despite some technical or internet issues, no worries. This would be anyway recorded, and the presentation as well. I don't find the record would be available afterwards for the participants. They can go back to them. Thank you very much, Frost. Now let's move to from what you presented in regard to UNRWA to a voice from the field. This is a message this registered by Dr. Muhammad Awad Shbeir, who's a refugee currently in another school in Gaza. Thank you. My colleagues, dear colleagues in the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, I would like to greet you. Have a good evening. I'm speaking to you, Muhammad Awad Shbeir. I'm Palestinian from Gaza Strip, Governorate of Rafah. I'm displaced currently to Rafah. This is because of the war inside Gaza Strip and the atrocities. We have suffering and wrong. We've been wronged as Palestinians because of this war. My dear colleagues in the interagency network, we have noticed the psychological effect of this war on children. These have been reflected in dangerous impacts on their psychology, and this was represented in seeing the influence which is not normal, and it's beyond what we expect usually would appear amongst children through observation and speaking to children. We discovered that those children had very difficult responses, and they have PTSD. They started to remember those very painful memories because of seeing the killing, the bombardment, and the demolishing of houses. This was clear in their drawings. The children today are talking about what they've seen, what they've heard, and this was clear in their drawings, their stories. This was also seen as behaviors, new behaviors. The children showed, and there was also there was complaints by the parents, the care givers. They started saying that the children are seeing nightmares at night. The children now are very much attached to their parents. They continuously ask about the parents who have been displaced to other places or who stayed in the north. They don't feel stability. They are over vigilant and cautious. They don't care about their own self-care or the health and hygiene. And now we have also diseases, because anyway the basic needs, hygiene needs are not available, like for example cleaning materials, also taking showers. This is not possible anymore, and people are immediately are startled by any very loud voices or light voice, whatever reminds them of the war. If they feel the siren of the ambulance or the truck for cleaning, the high loud voices, they always feel anxiety. They always feel regret, blame of themselves, saying I would have loved if I didn't go to this place, if I wasn't born, if I was in another country, if I the children started talking about these things, as well as the very extreme emotional responses, aggression, and aggressive behavior, sabotage. Some children have numbness today as well, emotional numbness. The child will talk with saying, we don't have a future. This is a bad future. This is a difficult country. The child started to talk about martyrs, bombardment, and these words are no more the thing they are afraid of, and this became very normal for them. This shows that they have numbness today in this regard. Children also don't have passion or enjoy. They don't enjoy life. They don't have hope in the future. As well, there are other acute behavioral problems like anger, fits of crying, of aggressive behavior, over cautiousness. When the child sits with you, he would say, "Here, there is a voice of a rocket, a plane, bombardment." They are always watching the sky and afraid of the loud voices as well. The well-being now is deteriorating. It's at the minimum. The is a very low point. People are children are very afraid, extremely afraid and concerned. In addition to that, there is a difficulty in remembering positive things, over vigilance and frustration, thinking about pessimistically about today and the future. Also the customs in regard to, or the use the customs in regard to eating habits, as well as withdrawal from group activities. When they talk to you, they talk using the terms of the elderlies, the politics, and also the war terms. They are now all more aged. They are older than they are, and the war made them like adults. Today, it forced them to live within this pyramid of life, which is different than what they should be. And they have been facing suffering. They're speaking through the language of the old people. They know the military words, the truce. They know negotiation paper, the mediator from Egypt, mediator from Qatar, the ICCJ, the veto, all of these terms now have attracted the children's minds, and now they don't care about themselves, about their toys, that they don't enjoy their time and entertain themselves. No, the circumstances have affected those children and made their resilience and their psychological formation at the lowest. And now they feel that there is a collapse in their resilience now. And in front of the scene, we have done a number of interventions to help the children, just speaking to them about this suffering, about the pain, about allow them to express their ideas and emotions, to develop the safe space for them, and to go to this safe space whenever they need, how to help themselves and then others. All of those interventions and techniques we have helped them with, and we have done group activities to break this fear and this frozenness, so that we start to dismantle this kind of thinking, so that we can develop their well-being and to support their resilience, so that they can enjoy life, so that we can sow the seeds of hope in times like this. Under the slogan, "If education stops, we will not stop learning," we have interfered in those centers and then displacement areas, which are organized and not organized, and through the social committees. And we have raised the awareness of the mothers about psychosocial support, the first aid, psychological first aid. We have provided brochures, also pamphlet. We have distributed health pamphlets to take care of the children in front of such a scene, which is very difficult and painful, and which had reached the level of catastrophe or the humanitarian nightmare. I've told you about this reality through being in displacement myself, in the the centers of displacement. The scene is painful. Language cannot describe the suffering, the famine, people are suffering from is clear about the children, their parents inside the shelters, obtaining the personal things like food, dress, clothes is very difficult. Financial liquidity, it disappeared. People don't have enough money today, and this is the in addition to things being expensive, as well as winter and the cold, and while you don't have protection or prevention measures, as hospitals are very small in Rafah, and they are not capable of providing first aid to children because they take care today of the wounded after bombardments, and they do triage usually. And the schools now are absented. The children are not thinking about schools as a place where they can go to study. Now the image about school have changed in the minds of the children. From a place where they receive education, values, skills, now the schools are the place of shelter, where the child creates or makes a fire to cook, where he puts the robe between the classes so that they can hang on their clothes. Now the WCs are no more just to go and pee. Now they became places for cleaning themselves and having showers. Now the playground is no more a playground. It's a place where you can put your tent on. The school road had changed, and the concept of the school had changed. It is no more a place where you can get education. It's a shelter for refugees displaced, and this had shaken the principles and the pillars of the psychology of the child when the image about this school changes. When I said to one of the children, we will sit together, he said, no, I need to work. A young child said, I have some cans I want to sell so that I can get 1 shekel or 2 shekels at the end of the day so that he can buy for his brother or his family less than $1. So now we have child labor. Now we have so many reflections and impacts on the children, and I can say those psychological impacts, educational influence now means that the children and childhood are in the wind. Their ideas, their hearts have been shaken, their minds have changed after the war. Now they are no more children who look at hope. They have frustration and despair because of this catastrophic situation. Now the children have a kind of contradiction in their minds between what they used to read in books about the dignity, human dignity, international citizens, and also international solidarity, while at the same time the whole world doesn't care about the children of Palestine, not recognizing their rights, allowing the machine of war to kill, displace, and destroy the children without one united voice calling against this catastrophe and this misery on the psychological situation. I would say the scenes on the ground are undescribable. Language cannot express what we see. Children now have a high level of depression and PTSD, acute depression and PTSD, nightmare, and also fantasies, which are very dangerous. Now, on the social level, the families have dismantled, society have dismantled, because you see that the father is in the north, the mother, and they were obliged to. The mother is in Rafah. The brothers have been detained on the checkpoint while the family lives in another place. Now there is no more linkage with the rest of the community. The houses cannot house anymore. Half of the family is in one house, the other half is in another. All of these have led to kind of dismantling of the families, as well as suffering and pain the children have. This would affect their life and their childhood, the childhood of the Palestinians. The children are suffering and are in despair. I would like to thank you for listening to me, and all greetings to all of you. And I hope that you are going to be our voice in the future to tell the world about this catastrophe and what our children is going through. My greetings, your colleague, Muhammad Awad Shper. I'm a volunteer in the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. Thank you very much. My greetings. All due thanks to everyone.
نشكر دكتور محمد
We'd
شبير.
like to thank Dr. Muhammad Shper, who is not with us today. However, the chat does not show if you are sharing the recording or not in the chat. So many people are thanking you, Dr. Muhammad, for sharing all these pieces of information. They are greeting you, thanking you for all your efforts. They're saying it's very important to have this so that we know exactly what, or have a better idea about what the interventions needed for children. In regard to those who are sharing ask questions on chat, yes, thank you. You can send those to the Q&A as well, and we can reach the end of the forum on time. Your questions, as long as we have your names, we can come back to you and send the answers either now, if we could, in this workshop, or we can send you in private if it's possible. Send us your email address next to the question. Now, let's move to Dr. Ilham Nasser. The floor is yours. Sorry, before we go to Dr. Ilham, I would like to remind you that the information Dr. Shper had provided and in this recording are already on the slides. The main ideas he talked about. If you'd like to have another look at those, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I want to thank Dr. Muhammad for grounding us in what's going on right now in Gaza. And I would like to also share with you in the 5 or 10 minutes I have 3 main points that are important based on what just Dr. Muhammad shared with us, as well as what we heard from UNRWA, FROS, and others. As you know, I am part of Creative Associates, and we have a project in Gaza that we are also thinking along with others to how we can implement it. Before I do that, I would like to make 2 points related to what Dr. Muhammad just shared. And these are my personal opinions about what's going on in Gaza, and also to make a recommendation, since we are on a panel with a lot of international organizations that are attending or presenting at this important panel. The main 2 points I would like to make and remind us all of them. One is that I, in this presentation, going to avoid providing numbers and statistics in my notes about mental health needs in Gaza, because I think that my colleagues before me and all these different reports we see have actually updated us as much as possible on what's going on in the daily lives and the needs of Gazans. But I'm also doing that to honor the people of Gaza and the youth-led organization called We Are Not Numbers. They write on their website, numbers are impersonal and often numbing. What they don't convey are the daily personal struggles and triumphs, the tears and the laughter and the aspirations that are so universal that if it weren't for this context, they would immediately resonate with virtually everyone. End of quote. I think this is an important piece to remember, that we are talking about people. I would like to honor here also many writers, authors, poets, journalists, teachers, and children who have lost their lives in Gaza and the West Bank, actually. One of those is the loss of the life of the Professor Rafat al-Arair, who was a renowned Palestinian writer, poet, professor, and activist. He was deeply involved in the formation and development of We Are Not Numbers. I would like to urge all of us, and this is my main first point, to think about the people behind the numbers and names. And Dr. Muhammad gave us a very accurate, I think, and vivid picture of what's happening on the ground. I think that in our attempts to fulfill quotas and fulfill deliverables as development agencies, we may forget about the human aspects and the humanizing or humanization that we have behind the numbers. My second point that I would like to make here is that I think there is agreement about the importance of education in emergencies and in conflict situations. I know we are all, and we heard that already, we are trying to figure out what to do, how to do things, how to address the enormous needs. But we are also in a very unpredictable era, but also arena. Back in December, when the first panel on this topic, right to education, that was mentioned earlier, nobody thought that we would still be experiencing, watching, observing in genocide going on now in March 2024. I think that no one also can say for sure and certainty that what we think we should be doing and how to intervene to address the enormous mental health and psychosocial needs that we are facing. Not only for children, of course, but for adults. I think that the whole population in Gaza is in trauma. And as many here worked in different countries and have experienced other conflicts, we have some that are going on right now, like in Sudan and Ukraine. And unfortunately, that we have to experience all of these different conflicts and the impact of that on children. But I think this one is a unique one. And maybe I'm going a little bit into the politics here, but this is the first one where we see a deep level of involvement of the US government and Western governments in their unlimited support of Israel's right-wing extremist government. Whether we like it or not, politics and politics of funding, who's going to give money to whom, play a huge role here in the humanitarian effort and the ability to implement. The plight of Gazans for dignity, for health, for self-determination did not really start in October. I think Frost mentioned that. And not in 2014, and not in 2012, and not in 2008 and 2009, about 15 different wars that were launched on Gaza. But we're talking about a fourth or fifth generation of children of refugees who were displaced in 1948, what we call a Nakba. Some of them are still alive, and some of them are actually passing on that plight for freedom to their children. Of course, rightly so, but without going too much into that political arguments about the history of the conflict and all of that, I think what I would like to emphasize here, that we are talking about deep needs and mental health issues and intervention that we need to remember when we are taking on PSS, SEL, or mental health initiative. We as international agencies need to determine the scope and the depth of expanding our thinking on mental health and PSS needs. And I find it very ironic that in Gaza itself, we have had a lot of scholars who in the past led research and presented intervention models for mental health across Palestine and other areas of conflict, because they also highlighted the needs, the unique needs of Gaza. I urge us all to plan with Gazans in mind. I also urge us all to remember that there is this recurring trauma that has been going on for more than 75 or so years. These are just my personal opinions regarding what's going on and how we intervene as international agencies and development and humanitarian agencies. What I would like to describe next is what we have been doing as creative associates with our program on basic education activity. This project originally proposed to further develop the early childhood education sector and primary education sector from grades 1 to 6. It happened that we received the word about our award about a week before October 7th. What happened after that is that we were required to quickly rethink and restructure our activities in the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem. The original plans were to work with local partners in Gaza, and all of these had to change immediately. Some of our partners that we were talking to lost their staff and lost their offices. So we had to shift our thinking regarding this collaboration, which I was asked to focus on. We had to also shift our thinking about personnel and hiring of people in Gaza. And relying heavily, I think we're all in the same boat on that. We are relying heavily on the different reports we have been receiving from UN agencies and other people who are on the ground, the education cluster that we're gonna hear from, and other agencies. So we really don't know, and that's the bottom line of where we are. But what we're trying to do is to be prepared for this first phase. I think we're all working from the same template of 3 phases. The first phase is when there is permanent ceasefire, because of course we cannot implement anything right now. So our program actually has 5 different components. One is quality learning environments for children, access to appropriate resources, and here we actually also give attention in our project to children who are with disability and children who have been experiencing disabilities even before October 7th. The third component is instructional quality. And the fourth component is inclusion. It's not just to provide the access, but how can we sustain and maintain educational institutions that would include children with disabilities. And now with all the different physical disabilities we have been witnessing, I think there is huge need for that. And then our fifth component is family and community engagement. We see that mental health and psychosocial support is part of every one of these components. And we see that it's integral and it's important to embed these SEL, PSS in all the components and aspects of our interventions and development of these different areas that we would like to focus on in 4KGs as well as 1 to 6. In our adoption of the 3 phases for Gaza, and I would like to say that with the West Bank, our program is moving forward with our objectives and collaborations with 2 local agencies. I think one of them is in attendance. We have Juzur and we have Al-Nayzak, who are both local Palestinian agencies working in the West Bank as well as Gaza. We identified more and other activities, but also partners for Gaza, especially those that have that access on the ground, grounding us to understand how can we really implement these 3 phases? How can we really reach families and children and communities? There are also newly formed communities based on the displacement. So, how do we go about that? How do we go about taking those 3 different phases into consideration? Where do we start? I think is one of the major questions that I think many of us here in this webinar are thinking about, trying to plan for. And who do we start with? One of our activities includes establishment of temporary learning spaces. So I'm sure there are others who are, and we are talking to others who are also working on ensuring and creating these temporary learning spaces. But I think it's our responsibility here as a community of international humanitarian aid and development to ask the question, how can we all work together to provide those temporary learning spaces as an example of some of the options and the activities that we can initiate. We hear some reports, for example, from the north that we cannot access the north. So where do we really start? What are the priorities? If we cannot access the north, can we access the south? But the south is still under active military operations by the Israeli government. So how do we ensure the safety of the children and activities? I think there are a lot of questions to be discussed, and we have been engaged with many of our possible partners as well, our co-partners, Jazur and Nizak, trying to answer these questions. I would really like to urge everyone here to take this approach of finding solutions together and cooperating, and to be very also honest about this. There is an opportunity in Gaza. There is an opportunity for many organizations to engage, and I think that we should avoid competing against each other. And I would like to make this call here and this forum, but to work together to find solutions so we could get to these people who have been experiencing trauma over many, many, many years, and maybe we can make a difference. I know that numbers are important. I know that statistics and impact and all of this results and outcomes are very important, but I would like to urge us all to look at the human story and to try to connect with the ground as much as possible. Thank you so much.
شكرا كتير دكتور إلهام وعن فكرة.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ilham. In regard to your idea in regard to cooperation with each other is important. There is a question in the Q&A about how to coordinate with the UNICEF from the Middle East. And now we would move to the representation of the education cluster and the MHPSS team in also in مركز إبداع Humanity and Inclusion. I would like to present Mr. Fadi Baidoun first, who is the coordinator of the education cluster. Thank you very much, Dr. Ilham, and all the participants. Please put the questions in the Q&A part, and if we did not have enough time for that at the end, we will promise you that we will try as much as possible to, if we have answers to your questions, to answer them. If not, maybe in the next sessions. Cluster of education. Thank you very much, Mariam. First of all, I would like to thank the interagency network for education in emergencies to allow us to speak about a very important topic, which is the psychosocial situation of the children in Gaza. And I would like to thank my colleagues, my friends, Dr. Ilham, Farsi, Muhammad, all the speakers who could summarize this reality of the people, of the children specifically of Gaza in a very professional manner. You have delivered the message. And I would like to say that, to talk about what we wanted to talk about first. Nonetheless, I'm here representing the educational institutions which are still running and working on the psychosocial support. We are providing recreational activities to support the children in Gaza. A large part of the presentation I wanted to talk about have already been mentioned by my colleagues, so I don't want to go to those details. I will talk about the general issues, and I will talk about something I see important, which was talked about, which is coordination. Now we are in the 5th month of the war against Gaza, 5 months with the children in Gaza not gaining any education. The schools, I don't want to go to the details and the numbers. Dr. Ilham had inspired me not to talk about numbers. So let's talk about the children's stories instead, and to give the human face to what's happening. We can talk about the percentages. Large percentage of the schools have been demolished, and a larger also percentage now are becoming shelters for the displaced. So we are talking about the whole sector which has been affected, and the children are not in a safe place, which would support them positively. Now, what we could do in the working group is that we came up with a kind of coordination amongst the partners so that we can provide the education to the children in emergency. From the first day at the war, we have decided that we need to work on the psychosocial support for children. And based on this, we have created a committee, which was a temporary committee of partners and stakeholders.
and our colleagues in child protection. This group worked quite well during the last few months, and I have a presentation about their work and I might share it with you. And if I want to share with you the outputs of the coordination that took place, and it's important to talk about something that Frost mentioned before, but I'd like to highlight it again because it is important. The psychosocial situation of children in Gaza is very bad for many reasons. If we go to the next slide, we can talk that there are many studies. Part of this study Frost talked about, but the study conducted by our partners through the last 3 years, that the situation of children in Gaza, they were under huge pressure, psychological pressure, social pressure. Many of them were suffering, and this problem is there because of continual wars and the blockade of Gaza for about 16 years. But if we move next, we can see that the situation deteriorated a lot after 7th of October. So the situation was bad for children in Gaza. After the 7th of October became very dangerous. Part of what Dr. Muhammad mentioned, actually, it was very important when he talked about the children that he noticed in shelter places, but we have more than partners who managed to give us reports talking about the same topic, that children in Gaza, all according to UNICEF, today they need four interventions concerning the MHPSS pyramids. Our partners in the field talk about that there is a very negative development of the psychosocial situation of children in Gaza. There are indicators of a trauma, and there are many changes in their behavior. So to be able as partners, as societies, UN agencies, international agencies, and Palestinian organizations, to be able to provide suitable services. We worked on providing education in emergency and working on psychosocial support. So we first of all, we prepared and worked on designing a library so students can have access to libraries to read about all the resources related to providing psychosocial support to children. And our colleague Ala in Save the Children shared with us a plan for 6 weeks that our partners might be able to work on with the children. If we move to the next slide, this plan, next please. Here, this is the library. If we have access, we can see the resources for all these societies that worked on, and it is available to everybody. It's open, so everybody can use it. Next, show us how we managed to work as societies together on week plans to psycho support children. So any institution works with the children can make use of these plans. These plans are detailed through the week. What are the available materials that they can use, the topics we work on concerning the psychosocial support, like sport, recreative activities. If we move to the next, we can see how we manage to move one step by step, one day by day, week by week with our partners to use this methodology to work with the children. In this way, we try to unify the methodology, the way that we all work to provide psychosocial support to children and to make a positive effect on their psychological situation, which is deteriorating dramatically. I don't like to take long time Today we have the Psychosupport Center and Humanity and Inclusion. They have a very important role to develop these materials with the INE, and we'd like to give them the chance to talk about their role, about the work they do in the field. So I'd like to give the mic to Mahmoud to talk from the HI perspective about the work they
شكرا
do
كتير
in the field.
فادي وشكرا
Thank you, Fadi, and thank you, Mahmoud. But if we can take into consideration that we are almost about to finish this webinar, we might not be able to answer the questions. So, Mahmoud, the mic is yours. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Fadi. And thank you to everybody. Actually, Fadi is my colleague. And here I have my colleague, Abdul Qadir Abu Zlaylan. He is a team leader in what we might turn off the camera because the connection is poor a little bit. No problem. Okay. Concerning the task force, would you please move to the next slide?
اوكي يعني احنا كنا بدنا نحكي في اكثر من
We wanted to talk about different points. First one, HI, about the mental health and psychosocial support.
نعمل in-depth and rich discussion to mobilize resources and exchange experiences وهذا كان كثير مهم بالنسبة لنا.
This was very important for us, especially that what we can be done. The speaker can use either Arabic or English. Actually, here we focus on the inclusion in all the activities that we implement, particularly for those who are with disabilities and with other vulnerable groups. HI works include people with disabilities and other populations to address their basic needs.
And fundamental rights. زي ما حكوا المتحدثين السابقين كتير مبادئ ومفاهيم تغيرت أثناء الحرب.
Many principles have changed during the war, even what children are reading in books, and we teach them about human rights, about dignity. All of these things actually are not available anymore. They have different concepts now. They have different ideas because the situation is very difficult from what we are trying to teach them. And this actually affected their behavior. As task force, as HR, we try to make all the activities inclusive.
knowledge and expertise وعندنا احنا guidelines وتيبس شيتس لهذه الاشياء. عشان هيك احنا اشتغلنا على self assessment tool.
So we worked on self-assessment too.
assist الفاسيليتيتورز في الريكريشنال اكتيفيتيز بالذات ركزنا انه ensure انه their activities are inclusive even before they are implemented. وهذا بيساعد.
The speaker should use either English or Arabic. I'm sorry. Of course, this helped us a lot that our activities should be tailored to be more inclusive. Of course, our main challenge in Gaza, it's not our own challenge, that the connection is very difficult, and not only the internet connection, but even the mobile phone is very difficult. So our participation in task force had many challenges, but Fadi, Ala, and other colleagues facilitated things. So we used to work offline, and after that upload things online, and we managed to do this in our task force. So let me see that experience exchange among different parties in the task force. The task force was like an incubator for all of us and developed many things, as Fadi explained, and all of these things would be useful to all actors in this regard, in this cluster. Next, please. There is a slide before. Okay.
بس على عجالة من فضلك محمود.
But please, Mahmoud. So just to speak quickly about our intervention.
لنعطي وقت ل شكرا.
Okay, our intervention is based on that we face that we have large number of children who are participating in the activities, especially in shelters, the UNRWA shelters or out of the UNRWA shelters. So we try to mitigate this pressure by having different variety of activities, by having different activities. So we can, through these activities, provide psychological support and services in a flexible way to children. But there are some challenges that we faced, like some criteria that Mahmoud talked about, that they are changed for children. Now, as service providers, we have to review our intervention and to cope with the development of the field, especially that some of the challenges in Gaza, that the resources for the materials are not available. We don't have things, because the local market is out of order. So in all our activities, we try to conduct activities that need no materials. So in this way, we can make sure that large number of students or children can make use of. So thank you very much, and we hope that there would be a new chance to give you more detailed session about the inclusion and the MHPSS are used there in more inclusive way. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mahmoud, and to your colleague. Thanks a lot, and please take care and take care of all of those children that need these intervention. I believe that we are left with only 3 minutes. So for those who can wait,
نحن رح نكفي بس لحتى نعمل العرض.
Stay with us because we are going to have a presentation of. Okay, thank you. Hannah, please go ahead. Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you for having me. In the beginning, I'd like to thank my colleagues in the task force, all the societies and the partners who worked on this network that facilitates working in the field. And if I want to talk shortly about our role in the task force, it's based on the activities, practical activities that we worked in the field since last October. So actually we try to gather activities and to filter them according to what we have in the task force. So we focus on the psychological, social, and emotional support. We try to develop some activities based on art, recreational activities. And this, we have a photo of one of the activities in a shelter area. If we can move next. So we can talk more about the work in general. Our intervention started based on the specialized team that we work with in Gaza before last October. Our intervention focuses on finding the program of the PSS in the center that based on improving the output of education. And our center finds that these interventions is really important in emergency situation because it is important to mitigate the mental and psychological consequences of the situation. So it won't develop to be psychological trauma. It is important to stress the efforts of the field team who helped us to develop the emergency plan, which focuses on restructuring the programs in the center, in addition to developing and implementing other programs and other projects that serves in this urgent situation, emergency situation. We had activities in different areas of the strip in Khan Yunis, Rafah, Deir al-Balah, about 80,000 person. There were we had recreational activities, about 64 activities. We reached 32,000, 55,000 children. We reached about 22,000 parents, and as our center focuses on the psychological, emotional support, so we tried to tailor this program according to the needs during this crisis. So we tried to we focused on two activities of these two skills in accordance with the situation to make children able to control their emotional skills. Next, please. Here we can say quickly say that the activities that we work on, we have recreational activities, whether about art or sports. We have psychoeducation for caregivers about the mechanism of adaptation, and this is important for parents so they would be able to recover and to deal with the children in healthy way, and to deal with their emotions. And we have what we call it SIL project programs that we tailored, and we worked on to catch up with the classes. And currently now I'm talking to you now in Khan Yunis, one of the projects based on this program in Al Fakhouri area. So we had a gathering, an educational gathering for those teachers who are out of shelter, and the photo was in the beginning of the presentation, and you can find other photos and other activities on our website and on our Facebook page. I'd like to add that we continually provide a PFE because this is important to be provided to people either in shelter areas or even in hospitals, and this is part of our work, even in neighborhoods, in tents and camps. And we worked on counseling for individuals or groups, and honestly, this was due to the need that we found out during our interventions. And what helped us during this is that a big part of our staff, they were specialists in psycho support and providing kits, whether they were hygiene kits, winterization, recreational kits. And lastly, we have the need assessment, which was main part of our work, because this is about realizing real needs through filling in just short surveys or some researches that we worked with our teams. It is important to mention that Through all of these interventions, we focus on on more than one thing, to have a safe space for children or even parents to express themselves, and even we try to include people with disabilities, and this, of course, a good chance to highlight that there is an increasing number of people with disabilities. In the last slide, we'd like to talk about. Let's move on to the last slide.
الchallenges كانت بتتذكر إن ممكن هي
Generally, the
تكون
challenges, actually, they might be repeated from what previous speakers mentioned, but the challenges that we face, it's about the this show us that the challenges are very big and the need is larger than the provided services. We had a problem with communication and with the transportation, whether moving between among cities, and even communicating teams inside Gaza, and here even to contact the center here in Ramallah. And we had lack in resources, and even if the resources were available, but they are very very expensive, and this is one of the challenges that we faced. At the end, I'd like to thank the field team, because I always say that they are the heroes of this work, and we learn from them. We develop our methodologies according to their vision, and I believe that this crisis taught us a lot, and gave us a different vision concerning education and about teaching. And at the end, thank you all. Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you, everybody. So I'd like to conclude with what you said. We need each other to understand more the needs for those who need to develop their programs, to take these needs into consideration, and to the resources. Thank you. At the end, thank you to everybody. Thank you to the participants. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to sharing questions in the chat box and you send in the Q&A. We know that we couldn't have the chance to answer these questions, but we are taking these questions into consideration, and we will share them with our speakers and send you the reply if we could. And as Esther talked, and by answering one of these questions, we ask you to join the community of a practice. I can't find it in. It's okay if we wanted to see the last slide that we shared in the presentation. At the same time, I'd like to thank the speakers, the interpreters, and all the colleagues in the INE who were in the back scenes. What I wanted to say, actually, that the INE, or the community of a practice in the INE, this is the last link in this list, and you can visit the website of the INE that you would get it and would be added to the recording of the session in English and Arabic. And of course, you can have a look at different resources of the INE or the partners available on the website through the shared links. So we would like to start with child protection, PSS, etc., etc. Thank you very much, everybody, and we hope that soon we would coordinate with each other to plan something good for children. Thank you very much.